Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Sidra from Driving Instructors Association, and I hope you're all doing very well this morning. And thank you so much for joining us for today's session on medical conditions impacting licensing. We are delighted to have David Gill with us today. David has been an ADI for over 30 years, and for the past 5 years, he has been working with driving mobility as a driving advisor. He brings a wealth of knowledge, and he'll be walking us throughout today's session on medical conditions and licensing and everything in between. We will get started in just a minute, but we'll let everyone join in first. So while we're waiting, I'd love to hear from you all. So could you pop into the chat box and let us know why you decided to join today's session and what are you hoping to take away from it? So let's see what everyone's saying. Gain more knowledge and understanding. Certainly, when you have more knowledge on the subject, you should be able to help your learners throughout the process of licensing. We have someone who is looking to become a disability instructor, which I suppose, David, you will be more than happy to guide them on this as well.
Absolutely. It's part of the presentation towards the end, yes.
Oh, that's brilliant then.
Yeah.
That's very good. I can see everyone's really interested in the topic, and it certainly helps you to be a better driver trainer when you know how to help your pupils through all the stages of becoming a driver. So I suppose we can start now. So David, I'll let you introduce yourself in a bit more detail and driving mobility as well. So over to you now.
Okay. Again, good morning, everybody. I'll go to the first slide if it'll move. Oh, it doesn't want to move. No.
If you click on the arrow pointing on the right, that should work, hopefully.
Yeah, that's what it's not happening.
Are you on your slides?
Hang on. Ah, there we go.
Brilliant.
We'll get it to work. Sorry, I'm a bit of a technophobe, everybody. So if it all goes wrong, I really do apologise. So as just been previously said, my name is Dave Gill. I am a driving advisor in driving mobility. I've been a driving instructor for nearly 28 years now. And the last 5 years, I have worked at North East Drive Mobility, which is up in Newcastle, which is part of the Driving Mobility Network. So what we do is driving mobility, as it says on the screen there, we have 20 independent driving and mobility assessment centres throughout the UK. 16 of these are in England. We do have several satellites and outreach centres as well. So for myself, I am based in Newcastle, but we do have an outreach centre in both Carlisle and Stockton. There's some in Wales, and they have outreach centres supporting most of Wales, and in Belfast as well, which they cover the entirety of Northern Ireland. We do have a centre in Glasgow as well, which now has an outreach centre in Aberdeen, and one hopefully open in Inverness, opening up soon. So as you can see, we do cover everywhere in the UK. Now, what we do is we offer, it says advice and guidance with anything to do with driver supporting people with physical and cognitive impairment, as well as older drivers. Now, what we do is, which you'll find out later in the presentation, we do what's called medical fitness to drive assessments. So that could include people with dementia, who've had stroke, have Alzheimer's disease, and all other sort of medical conditions, which we'll get onto. And as you can see from there, we do get clients from sources from all medical advisors, so GP referrals, hospital and clinic referrals, the DVLA centres a load, Motability, and people can refer in to ourselves as well if they have concerns about their driving. Our centre offers all these services for free, except there's one that's missed off there, which we do get referrals from the police as well. Northumbria Police do refer people in who have maybe been involved in an accident or a motoring incident, and the police don't really want to prosecute them, so they send us to us to make sure that it's not a medical condition that's affecting their driving. Like I say, that's the only one we charge, and we charge about £120 for that one. Everything else, is because we're in the NHS, is free. But if you go to other centres around the country, they can charge for some assessments as well. So the aims of today, what we're going to get onto today is applying for your licence for the first time. So this is probably more of interest to the ADIs out there. How a pupil what all the hoops the pupil has to go through to get the licence if they have a medical condition. We're going to go through the theory test and the driving test, what help is out there, how we can help as ADIs, and also what the DVSA are doing to help as well. Restriction codes. So some of you will come across restriction codes before. The most common one is 01, but we'll get into that later. Driving assessments for conditions that develop later in life. So this is where we're more concerned as a driving mobility centre. So somebody comes with a driving condition, and we try to help them keep the licence as much as we can. There's a couple of different licenses we've got there. One is Section 88, one is a PDAL. Again, I will explain all that later. And then we get onto the restriction codes again, how they may differ from the driving tests. And then the last but by no means least is what we can do to help you guys out there to either understand dealing with people with medical conditions, or indeed becoming a driving instructor that teaches with adaptions. So, applying for the first ever driving licence. As is usual, everybody has to do it. We complete the form D1. Now on this on this form, there is a little bit that does say, have you got any medical conditions you consider notifiable to the DVLA? A lot of pupils, a lot of parents, they don't know if it's notifiable or not. So they go to the GP. The GP can help them out. And for the GP to help out as well, there's a massive, massive document that is called, I'll just flick over, the Assessing Fitness to Drive, a Guide for Medical Professionals. I wouldn't even bother trying to put this on the screen for you. It is a massive document. It contains all sorts of information about all sorts of medical conditions, neurological, physical, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, all of that sort of thing. And that helps the doctor decide whether or not the condition is reportable to the DVLA. If you can't find your condition in there, because it is quite a complicated document, and you've got to fill a form in, which will help you apply for the license. There's what's called an A to Z list. So this is just find online. You just type in A to Z of medical conditions, and it comes up with this page here. All you do, as you can see, there's A, B, C, everything that you need. You just type in the condition: cerebral palsy, stroke, motor neuron disease, Parkinson's disease. All these medical conditions are all listed in this, and that will link you to which form that you need to actually fill in. It is a long, complicated procedure, and I feel sorry for the pupils that have to do it. For instance, I had a pupil who took the best part of 8 months to get the license. They were applying when they were 15, and the reason why they were applying when they were 15 is because pupils who are in receipt of the higher rate of personal independence payments can start driving when they are 16 years old. A lot of people don't know this, but it is available for people with certain medical conditions. So if you don't understand what personal independence payment is, some people haven't come across it before. What it is people who need extra help with mobility or normal daily living. They can apply for this personal independence payment. There's 2 parts. There's the caring part and the mobility part. If you want to take out a mobility car and learn to drive when you're 16, you surrender the top part of that PIP. So that top little bit for your mobility, that goes to you towards your car, and they can actually pay for up to 40 hours of driving lessons as well. So to get the license, after you've gone through all of that, you fill this form in. This form is a B1. Now, this is for things like cerebral palsy, so neurological things that can affect physical as well. I did choose for cerebral palsy because it's quite a common one and people sort of understand what cerebral palsy is all about. It can affect people in many, many, many different ways, and that's what this form's all about. It does give permission for the DVLA to contact your GP, your consultant, or anybody that's involved in your care or management of your health condition. This form's a long, long form. It's very complicated. People don't understand it. What I would say to yourselves is just download one, have a look through what the information is needed. Like I say, it's a long, boring form. And this kickstarts the process for people to get their driving license. So the DVLA will then do a medical investigation. Excuse me. And like I said before, I had a pupil, this took up to 7-8 months before they got the license. So they actually nearly turned 17 before they got permission to drive and get a driving license. Sometimes it comes back and they don't give a license out for whatever reason, whatever the GP has said. They can't then reapply again. So it just takes a long, long time. What happens then is, depending on the information they're given, you will get what's called, you'll get your provisional license come through. And if they're not sure that you're going to need adaptions, or they're not sure that you're going to need extra time for your test or anything, you'll get what's called a code 114 on the back. The 114 just is a general code which covers everything that they can humanly think of until you get your driving test. And then when you get onto your driving test, that's when the codes will be correctly given out. But again, we'll get onto that a little bit later on. So the next part, obviously, you guys know, you get on your driving lessons, you go for the theory test, and they have to apply for the theory test. On the theory test, the DVLA have given extra resources. So the normal time, you go in, they've just got it on the computer. Some people find that really, really difficult. So what that means is the DVLA have given these extra resources out. Easiest one, use of headphones. All that happens there is you just ask for the use of headphones when you apply, and that's just provided straight away. You can get extra time again, and again, that just goes on the form that I require extra time, and that's very easily given out. The next few are a bit more difficult. So you've got a reader recorder, an oral language moderator, and in certain exceptions, you can get the theory test conducted in your house. So the reader recorder, what this is just a helper, so to speak. So it comes in with a theory test for somebody, reads the questions out, the pupil then gives the answer, and the person will then record the answer for them. Very simple way to go. The language moderator, slightly different. This is what they do is they take the question, they will then try and simplify the question, then simplify the answer, and then again record the answer for the pupil. The hoops you have to go through to try and get these resources is quite extensive. Again, you do the application. You then have to get some sort of evidence from either a teacher or a medical professional that backs up the fact that the pupil needs these extra help. Now, that would be the easy bit. The fact is, getting one, because there's so few reader recorders and language moderators around, it can take quite a while. So if you suspect that your pupil is going to need one of these extra resources, it's best to try and get your application in quite quickly so that these things can be arranged. I have known up to 6 months sometimes to get an actual theory test in for people who need these extra resources. The last one, in exceptional circumstances, you can have the theory test taken at your house. Again, massive hoops to go through, lots and lots of evidence required, and then they'll set everything up in the house. I've only ever known one person get it in the time that I've been doing it. I have known 3 or 4 people who've tried, but I've only known one person actually get this the theory test computer put in the house. Like I say, you'll need evidence from your doctor, or from the pupil's doctor, should I say, or teacher. Now, driving mobility at the minute in several centres around the country are doing theory test help sessions. This is also allowed as proof by the DVLA that extra resources are required. So have a look around at the driving mobility centres and see who can help you out, really. Boom. The driving test itself. So you've got through your theory test, you've got all your lessons, you come to your driving test. What you need to do is when you go to book the driving test, you go on the booking form, or the client's mother does, or father or parents, go on the form and apply as normal. So driving license number, theory test number, but there's a little drop down box that says any special requirements needed. Click on that and they give you a whole list of options. One of the options is, do you need help with that requires a physical difference or an educational difference or pregnant, something like that. Once you click on the form, you then have to fill in how the medical condition affects the driving. So if it needs adaptations, so for instance, cerebral palsy again, your right side dominant and your left side isn't so good, and you're using a steering aid, for instance, on the wheel with secondary remotes, which are infrared for indicators, which we'll get on in a second, then you need to fill that in. This will then decide, or the DVLA will then decide, sorry, DVSA will then decide whether or not you need to take a double time slot. But the reason why the double time slot is there, it's not because the driving test is longer. It still takes you 40 minutes, 38, 40 minutes. They still do all the same things. The pull up on the left, the hill starts, the maneuver, everything is exactly the same as the conventional driving test. The only difference is that the driving examiner will need the second slot to do extra paperwork. For instance, in Durham, when I book a test in Durham, the driving test slot comes up. It's always on a Thursday and it's always at 10:14. So then they don't do the 11:11 test and they're doing paperwork or sometimes get a longer lunch break. The driving test itself can be quite stressful. The examiners, and I'm not blaming the examiners for this, quite often have no experience of dealing with adaptions in the car. And this can be quite off-putting for the pupil. I'll give you an example of one of the pupils I had. I was sat in the back and the examiner she was using secondary controls, so it was a steering aid with indicators on, windscreen wipers, that sort of thing. And the examiner actually looked back at me and asked me how he would do the show me question in the car, because he'd never seen anything like the adaptions before. Again, this is not the examiner's fault. I believe the DVSA don't allow the examiners enough training to conduct tests for people with disabilities, and just my opinion. What I tend to do is although I put all the information on the booking form, what I tend to do is on the day of the driving test, I'll either go to the driving test centre or give them a phone call and speak to the examiner who's taken my pupil out and explain what is required. And the DVSA have said that they should make any reasonable adjustments to help the client out whilst on the driving test. This is for both physical and educational needs. So for instance, again, a couple of examples for you. If you have a neurodiverse pupil who has too much information stimulus, so for instance, sat nav, then you can actually request that they follow the signs, and the DVSA should take that into account. You can ask for them to do extra pull-ups on the left and give it a little bit more time so the pupil can chill out. And that's just a couple of very, very simple things that the examiner can do. My girl who had cerebral palsy, she couldn't make it up the steps to the test centre. So the examiner came out, sat in the car, they did the eyesight check from the car, they did all the document check in the car, and that was just great for the pupil. They didn't have to get stressed about getting out of the car and stuff. So don't be scared. I'll be saying, don't be scared to go to the examiners and tell them what's required. Have a chat with them. I find most examiners, especially the test centre that I use in Durham, are very, very, very understanding. Again, but some of them haven't been trained or haven't given any training, should I say, and all they have is their own experiences for when they were ADIs back in the day. So this is the restriction codes. As you can see on there, as I mentioned before, 01 is probably the most common one. I have 01 on my license because I do need my glasses to drive. And what tends to happen on the driving test, again, because of training, the examiners tend to ask me what codes are going to go on the pupil's license when they pass. We have seen instances where the wrong codes have been put on, or inappropriate codes, should I say, rather than wrong. So, for instance, where it says down there, code 33, not code 33, code 32, sorry, combined service brake and accelerator systems. This is a simple, what we call push-pull accelerator and brake. Again, I'll show you some adaptations later. It's just a mechanical floor-mounted lever. You pull, the car goes faster. You push, the car goes slower. And then they'll probably use a steering aid, but you don't have to. You can actually steer conventionally, given some training. The examiners have put that on, combined service brake and accelerator system. And then what might happen later on in life, for some reason, maybe it's they lose some power in their arm and they can't pull the accelerator anymore, and they need to switch to an electronic system, then they would have to take the driving test again. If they put on 20 and 25, then they wouldn't have to take the driving test again because it still covers the accelerator and the brake, but they are separate rather than combined. It's a thing we do have discussions with examiners about. Again, the problem is, as I'll discuss later, the examiners code for what they see. They don't code for what the pupil's probably capable of, which is where our assessments do come in. As I mentioned before, what happens is when you tend to get a pupil first applying for a license, they'll get a 114, which covers all of the adaptations there, or all the physical disabilities, maybe. And when they come to the driving test, that's when it gets narrowed down to these restriction codes on there. The other difference between the restriction codes on here and the restriction code that might be on a car after a driving test is if someone passes the driving test in an automatic, they get coded as 78. If they get coded later on when we do our assessments for driving with an automatic only, they get coded at 10. This is because the modified transmission is because of a medical condition and not because they passed the test in an automatic. So that's when people have applied for the driving test for the first time, or the driving license for the first time, and they've gone on and they've passed the theory test, they passed the practical test, and off they go, and they have a lovely, lovely driving career, hopefully a long one. And this comes to what we then do. So later on in life, someone might have a life-changing incident. They might have an accident, they might have a stroke, they might have a heart attack, could develop dementia, motor neuron disease, and they come to us, or they are referred to us by, like I say, medical professionals, the police, the DVLA, they come to us for a driving assessment. The driving assessment's in two parts. We always do it in two parts, and there's always two people present. There's an ADI, which we call ourselves a driving advisor, and there's a clinician, which is either an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. They do the clinical assessment, and what they look at in the clinical assessment, as it says there, is the license check. We do an eyesight check, just like on a driving test, because if a client fails the eyesight check, we can't take them out on the road. They're illegal to drive, as you well know. What we would do then is we would send them away to an optician to see if this could be corrected. We tell them they can't drive till they come back, and on return, if their eyesight's okay, then we continue with the rest of the assessment. At that point, if their eyesight's still not good enough, we then actually refer them back to the DVLA, who will generally revoke their license. We take a brief medical and driving history from the client. So how long have you been driving? What sort of driving experience you've got? We get lots of people with loads and loads of driving experience come in. HGV drivers, bus drivers, whatever. People who've passed the test in the army. Medical history, so, you know, anything that might affect the driving. We do a very quick physical assessment. So let's say somebody comes in and they want to take the assessment in an automatic because they've been driving an automatic for years. We check out the physical capability of, can they press the clutch? Are they still capable of driving a manual car? And most of the time they are. It's just a personal choice. And because they've been driving an automatic car for years, we then just let them go out for an assessment in an automatic car. Clinicians then do a cognitive assessment. And I'll just go past that a little bit. Here's the cognitive assessment. So this is what's called the MOCA, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It's, I don't know if you can see it very well, but several parts to it. Some of them, we'll look at them and you'll think, well, that looks very easy. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, you'll see a load of numbers and letters. What we ask the client to do there is actually join the numbers and letters up in sequential order, going number, letter, all the way up to the end. We'll then ask them to copy the shape in the middle there. And then the blank bit at the top right-hand corner, we ask them to draw a clock, put all the numbers on, and set the hands to a certain time. So either 9:05, 11:10, things like that. And I bet you're thinking sitting there that looks very easy. But for someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, that's a very, very difficult task. And this gives us an idea of what might happen out on the road. We then ask them to identify the three animals, and you'll be quite surprised to hear that we get some people can't identify the three animals. I won't go through the whole of it, but you can have a look at that. It's a nice simple test. It takes about 15 minutes for them to do. It's not a pass mark or a fail mark, but if you score 26 or over, you're meant to be cognitively intact. I will say the first time that I tried that, I scored 25. But again, like I've said before, you might be slightly mad to do this job anyway, but that's that one. And then the other thing we do is ask them to draw them, complete this maze, start at the top, finish at the bottom. You're not allowed to go over any black lines or end up in any dead ends. The time for this is 60 seconds. I'm going to leave it on the screen for 60 seconds for you to have a look through. This is perhaps what we find, or what you have found, is the most useful tool to predict what might happen on the road. You get people come in and they can't forward plan, or they can't understand the instructions. And we find that usually reflects what happens out on the road. We always take people out on the road simply because that's the standard that we've been set. You can get a good idea what might happen by these tests, but on the roads, the only way you're going to know whether their driving is safe. At the end of the test, or the end of the assessment, should I say, we then give the client our thoughts and our advice, which can result in actually telling clients to stop driving and surrender the license to the DVLA. We're not allowed to take the licenses off them. Only the DVLA can do that. But one of the good bits about having a medical professional in the clinic room with us is once the medical professional tells the client to stop driving, their car insurance actually becomes invalid. I'm going to go back a couple of slides. So what we get, people turning up with types of licenses, they have a full license. So people, again, have been driving 60, 70 years. They've still got the full license and they've been asked to come and have an assessment. We get people who've got provisional license. So that is people who are looking to learn to drive. We actually get some people turning up without a license. We do have a private track, the back of our hospital here, where we can take people who have no license at all, and they're looking to see whether their medical condition is going to stop them from driving. I will say, in the 5 years I've been working here, I've never had anybody who's turned up and we've not said they can go on and have lessons. We do say, however, that it's not certain that they can pass the driving test, but they are capable of learning to drive. We see people with all sorts of medical conditions, wheelchair bound, children come in, they don't think they can drive because they've got no use of their legs, and we just prove them wrong, that they can do that. The Section 88 there, what a Section 88 is somebody who has reapplied for the driving licence and they are getting medically investigated by the DVLA. And what they've done is, rather than issue another driving licence, they've given them this Section 88 to cover them driving whilst the medical investigations are going on. When they land at our assessment centres, it's usually the last link in the chain. They've probably done all their other investigations and then we take them out for a drive just to make sure that their driving is safe. The DVLA tend to take notice of our driving, but as we tell clients, we aren't the last ones. The DVLA make the final decision because they have made some information that we don't have. Then we've got the Provisional Disability Assessment License, or PDAL as we call it. What a PDAL looks like, and it's just looks like a normal provisional license. It's green, photograph card on, it's got a start date, it's got an end date, usually a year. But there'll be a letter coming with that license as well. That gives them a length of time when they can have lessons, usually either a month or 3 months, and then come for an assessment. So again, what's gone on is they're under medical investigation. Maybe they've surrendered the license or had the license revoked in the past, and the DVLA are giving them a second chance. They can have driving lessons with any of you guys, anybody at all, any driving instructor. As long as they've got a dual control car, they don't have to have lessons through ourselves. So you might end up with somebody giving you a phone call saying, I've got this provisional disability assessment license. I'm going to go for a driving assessment at my local assessment centre. Can you help and give me some driving lessons? You need to look at the letter. The letter will tell you how long they've got. Like I say, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's 3 months, and it's from the start of their first lesson. You'll have to get the client to phone up the DVLA and give them a start date for the lessons, and then their assessment should happen within that time. It can get extended due to lack of availability of instructors or lack of lessons, something like that. So just be aware of that letter if you do get anybody asking for lessons using that license. What I would say is your local driving mobility centre, we do have a lovely website where you can find out where it is. We'll help you out with any advice that you need. So once they've done the clinical bit and we've sorted out the driving license and everything, we take them on a drive. The drive consists of a standard route lasting approximately 40 to 50 minutes. We do allow them time on our track as well, or in the hospital grounds to get familiar with the car, because we do it in our car. Or our car, should we say. We have a fleet of several cars, automatics, manuals, cars with adaptions, standard automatic, stuff like that. Up in Newcastle as well, we do have a high-tech van which you can take people out, which I'll show you some pictures of that a little bit later. It's a standard route. We have to do a standard route, and we only have one route in our centre anyway. Unlike the DVSA at your local driving test centre where you may have 14 or 15 routes, we have one route. And the reason why we have one route is that the clients cannot come back and complain that we made the route harder for them, easier for them or whatever, we do the same route for everybody, and that just eliminates any ambiguity on the drive itself. If you get someone coming for lessons before they come for assessment, we're not looking for a driving test standard drive. We're not looking at the check the mirrors every 10 seconds. We're not looking at the check the mirrors every time they move out to overtake a parked car. What we're looking for is we're looking for a good, safe drive. I always put it down to 3 things we look at on the road. So the first thing is that we look for that they responding to road signs, traffic signs, so 20-mile-an-hour limits. They keep a nice central lane position in what we're doing, and they make good judgment calls when they come to junctions. About halfway around, we do have a rest stop so we can give advice. What's been good on the drive, what areas need to improve on, and then we continue on with the drive, and we hope to see improvement if needed, because that's going to help us with the last bit, which is the result of the drive. So at the end of the assessment, we give them generally 1 of 3 results. So the first result is they're safe to drive. The other side of the coin is that they're unsafe to drive, and we ask them to surrender the license to the DVLA. The last one is we might send them away for some driving lessons. Again, this could be with any ADI. And the reason is when we've given them some information at the rest stop, some guidance at the rest stop, they've improved. We've seen an improvement. And that tells us that they can probably take on board some driving lessons. Sadly, with some cases, especially with dementia, Alzheimer's, stuff like that, they won't be able to take on board any driving lessons. They just revert back to their standard drive, and that would be unsafe. So we don't offer that to everybody. We don't offer the chance of tuition to everybody, sadly. So here we go. Here's some of the adaptions that we've got. So this adaption here is a standard steering aid with secondary remote. So you can see the buttons on the top there. That's got indicators. It's got windscreen wipers. It'll have a horn. You probably flash your lights on that one as well. That type there is what's called a Lodgins lollipop. We do have various different types as well. Also, if you can see by the driver's knee there, that's a little lever with a white toggle on top. That's the standard push-pull accelerator and brake. So that's you can use that if they've got no use of legs at all, and then the steering aid on top. You don't necessarily need the steering aid if you're using the push-pull. You can actually modify the way you drive and steer, just the standard conventional way. But a lot of people end up just using the steering aid as well. But that's a personal choice, and that's what we say about personal choice when we put it in there. If it's for comfort or for ease, we probably wouldn't code them. But if it's the needed out necessity, then we would code them for the steering as well. And this is the picture of one of our high-tech vans. You will notice it's on the wrong side. It's taken from Germany, this one. And you've got joysticks and you've got gear levers, and everything can be controlled just using your hands there. These solutions are there for people who maybe are driving back from wheelchair, or who have really, really restricted movements in their arms. There's a 4-way joystick on the left. What a 4-way joystick does is exactly what it says on the tin. You can accelerate, you can brake, you can turn left, you can right, you can just use that joystick. There's lots and lots of adaptions out there. What I would say, if you want to come and have a look at them, and in fact have a go, get in contact with your local driving mobility centre, and they are quite welcome, quite able to take you on, bring you down, have a look, have a go, and help you in any way forward with that. As I mentioned before, we would add the restriction codes to our clients depending on their needs, not necessarily what we see on the drive. The difference between our coding and the examiner's coding is if we code somebody for a certain type of adaptation, if they need to change that adaptation, they can come back for another assessment and we can actually get the restriction codes changed. If they got the restriction code put on at the time of the driving test, they would need to take another driving test. So similar to what you're probably used to is passing your test in an automatic, then want to drive a manual, you would actually then have to take your driving test again. It's exactly the same sort of principle with the different driving codes, sadly. So how can we help you get on board with licensing and all sorts of stuff? We do offer a disability awareness training for driving instructors and examiners. It's not the only course out there. There are other courses out there. There's an online course that John Rogers runs through his Facebook page, and all the details I'm sure you can get hold of from that Facebook page. Ours is face-to-face. It's a 2-day course. We go through all the medical conditions briefly because there's tons of medical conditions. We go through how we can deal with that, go through recodes, we go through licensing in a bit more detail than I've done today. And then we let you have a go of the cars or the van, and you can have a drive around using the various different adaptions. Similarly with the course that John Rogers runs, he does a lot of online stuff, and then he has a last day where he gets you to Solihull, I believe, where you can have a drive of the cars for a day as well. Both courses are excellent. There is a course at one of our centres called QEF, which is a 3-day course. Again, everything covers the sort of more in-depth stuff that goes on with the longer courses. This is our 2-day course. We show you about clinical input, gain knowledge on medical conditions, experience the driving and adaptions. You get a recognition from our centres where if you want to, you can go on our list of driving instructors, and we can send you clients who need familiarisation drives or more driving tuition that I mentioned earlier on. And it's good for your CPD as well. Get a lovely certificate. Ours costs £125. Other courses are a bit more expensive, but again, other courses are a bit longer and a bit more detailed. They're all good courses. I'd recommend going on one if you're that sort of way inclined. Go on all of them if you want. Each one you'll get will give you a little bit more info on medical conditions and how to respond to them. Like I say, they're all very, very good. Highly recommended. So what's next for us? It's the last little bit. We have just been granted a fund from the Motability. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard of Motability, or you've seen it on the forecourt of a garage saying Motability nil deposit required. So Motability, if you don't know, are a charity that I mentioned before. They take, you can get your pupils can get cars through Motability, they can get driving lessons through Motability, and they lose the top part of that personal independence payments. We've been offered, or we've given a grant, sorry, to do some research to find out from ADIs what the barriers are for ADIs to teach disabled people, how we can get more ADIs into this type of teaching. Is there a financial barrier, or is it a lack of knowledge? And what Motability could do to offer these incentives for yourselves to try and get involved. We need you to help us do this. We're trying to get an interview out. We do have a form and a form to fill in. Sorry, the copy's a bit squashed, but you've got the QR codes at the bottom. One's for people who want to learn to drive or would like to teach people, but don't know how to go about it. And one is for people, ADIs, who already teach clients with adaptions and stuff like that. What we'd like you to do is generally fill the form in. If you do need a better copy, I can give you my email address at the end, and you can email me and I'll send you a better copy of this form out. We'd love for everybody to send in the form, complete the questionnaire, and we'd love for as many people as possible to get involved with teaching people with adaptions, because there is such a lack of specialist tuition in certain areas of the country. And that's about it from me. I know I've whizzed through it all. I'll be honest with you, it's a massive, massive subject. I'd probably need more than an hour to go through everything. So if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to ask them and I'll try my best to answer them.
Well, firstly, thank you very much, David, for such an insightful session. We do have some questions in the Q&A box, and if everyone else has any question, please write them down there as well. The first one is by Helen, and she's asking, Is the Assess Fitness to Drive form available via DIA? It's not, but David, can you please tell us where they can find the Assess Fitness to Drive form?
The medical one. The medical fitness to drive for medical people is just online. You just go on to gov.uk website, type in medical fitness to drive, and that form just come up. The pages do come up.
Brilliant. Another question is by Lyndon, who's asking, can you reapply if the DVLA turned down the license?
Yes. What you would need is for your doctor to give some more support and evidence. I had a client who had their license revoked due to a medical condition. It took them 4 years to reapply, but they got there in the end. It's just a question of being a bit tenacious and getting the backing of your doctor or consultant. So you can reapply, no problem at all, yeah.
Okay, 4 years. Does it typically take that long?
No, sometimes it doesn't. It was this particular client, for some bizarre reason, the information the doctor was given wasn't the correct information, and we only found out when we actually asked for her medical records, and then when we looked through the medical records, we realised the doctor wasn't answering the questions in the correct form or that the DVLA wanted. And then we had a conversation with the doctor. I went up as well to help the client out. We went up and the doctor filled the form in correctly, or their part of the form, and it was immediately. Luckily for the client, they didn't have to go through any tests or anything. They just got the driving license, full license back straight away. But that doesn't always happen.
That's good to know. Also, Helen wanted to know how you're different than Queen Elizabeth's Foundation survey.
The Queen Elizabeth Foundation is part of Driving Mobility. They are the centre that do the 3-day course, QEF. So they're under the same umbrella organisation as I am. So there's literally no difference at all.
Okay, and everyone is asking for your email address as well. So if you don't
Okay.
mind sharing that with everyone.
Yeah. I think you've got it, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, just send that out. That's fine.
Okay, I'll be sending you the email address then for David if you want to ask him any questions.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be happy to help. And Robert is asking if you can go back to the QR codes.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. QR codes. Don't know if I can make it bigger or anything, but hopefully it'll zap and work. But if not, like I said, drop me, get the email address, and I'll send a better copy through. So I'm not very technically minded. I switched that up earlier on. So.
That's okay. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, David. This was a very insightful session. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I know everyone's really busy, so thank you for that. Before we finish the webinar, I just want to mention that DVSA has resumed standards check courses again. Sorry, the standards checks again. So we do offer standards check courses. We have plenty of options, one-on-one, online, and in person. So should you be interested, please reach out to me personally after I send you an email, and we will help you sort that out. Again, thanks very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day today. Thank you.
Yeah, same from me. Have a good day, everybody.